August 18th, 2019. The Oval Office, Washington, D.C. The President of the United States leans back in his chair, eyes scanning a map spread across the resolute desk. His finger taps on a massive island painted in white and green, Greenland. "Why don't we just buy it?" he asks. The room falls silent. Advisors exchange glances. Within hours, the question leaks to the press, and the world erupts in bewilderment and mockery. The Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, dismisses the idea as absurd. Diplomatic meetings are canceled. Late-night shows turn it into punchlines. But in Moscow, in Beijing, in military command centers across the Northern Hemisphere, the response is different. Analysts don't laugh. They take notes. Because Donald Trump, intentionally or not, has just revealed what intelligence agencies have known for decades. Greenland is the most strategically vital piece of real estate on Earth that nobody is talking about. Fast forward to January 2025. President-elect Trump reiterates his interest in Greenland, this time more forcefully, refusing to rule out military or economic coercion. Russia announces expanded naval exercises in the Arctic. China publishes white papers on its legitimate Arctic interests, despite being thousands of miles from the polar circle. Denmark scrambles to increase defense spending for Greenland. The world's most powerful nations are circling the world's largest island like sharks around wounded prey. Why Greenland? Why now? Why would the world's superpowers risk international condemnation, economic sanctions, even military confrontation over an island with a population smaller than a mid-sized American suburb? The answer isn't found in today's headlines. It's buried in ice, in blood, in centuries of forgotten conquest and strategic genius. To understand why everyone wants Greenland today, we must go back to when the first Europeans dared to claim this frozen fortress. We must go back to the Vikings. 985 AD. The eastern settlement, Greenland. Erik Erik the Red, stands on a rocky shore, watching his longship bob in the frigid waters. He is a murderer, an exile from Iceland, a man with nowhere left to run. But he is also a visionary. 3 years earlier, he sailed west into uncharted seas and found land, a massive island of ice and rock. Now he returns with 25 ships carrying farmers, livestock, and families willing to gamble everything on his promise. He calls it Greenland, a marketing ploy to attract settlers to a place that is anything but green. The gamble works. By 1000 AD, 5,000 Norse settlers carve out farms along Greenland's southwestern coast. They build churches, trade walrus ivory with Europe, and survive in one of Earth's most hostile environments. For 4 centuries, they endure. Then, mysteriously, they vanish. By 1500, the settlements are empty. Skeletons and abandoned longhouses. No signs of violence, just silence. Climate change, resource depletion, or something else. History doesn't say. But Greenland's first European experiment in colonization ends in ghosts. Yet Denmark remembers. When Norway and Denmark unite under a single crown in 1380, Greenland becomes a Danish possession by inheritance. The island is forgotten, irrelevant, a frozen afterthought on medieval maps. Then comes 1814. Napoleon's wars have ravaged Europe. Denmark, allied with France, is on the losing side. The Treaty of Kiel forces Denmark to cede Norway to Sweden. Everything is lost, except Greenland. In the treaty's fine print, Greenland remains Danish. Why? Because nobody wants it. Nobody sees value in that barren ice sheet. The British don't demand it. The Swedes don't request it. It's worthless. So Denmark keeps what no one else desires, a colonial vestige of a shattered empire. For over a century, Greenland sleeps. A few Danish missionaries and traders maintain minimal presence. The indigenous Inuit continue their traditional ways, barely aware that distant Europeans claim sovereignty over their homeland. Denmark governs Greenland as a closed territory, restricting foreign access, maintaining a policy of isolation and protection. Then, on April 9, 1940, everything changes. German tanks roll across the Danish border. Within hours, Copenhagen falls. Denmark's military, outnumbered and outgunned, surrenders without significant resistance. Nazi flags fly over the Danish parliament. And suddenly, Greenland, forgotten, worthless Greenland, becomes the most important island in the Atlantic Ocean, because Denmark is now under Nazi control, and Greenland is now an orphan. April 10th, 1940. Gotthab nuke, Greenland. Governor S. Brun receives a radio transmission from Copenhagen. Denmark has fallen. He stares at the message, understanding immediately what it means. Greenland is alone. No protection. No supply lines. And more critically, no clear sovereignty. Technically, the island now belongs to Nazi-occupied Denmark. But Brun makes a decision that will alter Greenland's destiny forever. He refuses to recognize German authority. He declares Greenland will govern itself until Denmark is free. 3,000 miles away, in Washington, D.C., President Franklin Roosevelt's military advisors gather around maps of the Atlantic. They see what Brun sees, a power vacuum. But they see something else, opportunity and danger intertwined. Greenland sits astride the North Atlantic convoy routes. Allied ships carrying weapons, food, and oil from America to Britain pass within striking distance of Greenland's coast. If Germany establishes bases there, if U-boats use Greenland's fjords as hideouts, if the Luftwaffe builds airstrips on that ice, the Atlantic lifeline could be severed. Roosevelt acts. On April 9, 1941, exactly 1 year after Denmark's fall, the United States and Greenland's provisional government sign a defense agreement. American troops land within weeks. Engineers arrive with bulldozers, dynamite, and prefabricated buildings. They construct airfields, weather stations, radio towers. The operations are codenamed Bluey West and Bluey East, bland designations or installations that become crucial to Allied victory. By 1942, thousands of American servicemen are stationed across Greenland. At Bluey West 1, near Narsarsuaq, a massive airbase takes shape. Bombers and fighters stop there to refuel on their way to Europe. The airfield becomes a lifeline. Aircraft that would otherwise lack the range to cross the Atlantic can now island hop via Greenland and Iceland. The 8th Air Force, destined to rain devastation on Nazi Germany, depends on this frozen refueling station. But America's interest goes beyond wartime necessity. Military planners recognize Greenland's geographic genius. The island sits at the apex of the shortest routes between North America and Europe. More significantly, it dominates the gap between the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic. The only route Soviet submarines would use if World War II becomes World War III. Even as American soldiers fight Germans, Pentagon strategists are already planning for the next war, the next enemy. And Greenland is perfectly positioned for that future conflict. The Germans know this too. They launch covert operations. Small teams of meteorologists and radio operators landed by U-boat to establish weather stations. Arctic weather patterns move west to east. Whoever controls Greenland's weather data controls Atlantic naval operations. American and German forces hunt each other across the ice sheet in a secret war most historians forget. The Sledge Patrol, Danish Greenlandic dog sled teams, become guerrilla fighters, tracking Nazi weather stations and calling in American strikes. When Germany surrenders in May 1945, American forces don't leave Greenland. They stay. Denmark, liberated but devastated, lacks the resources to protest. And America has no intention of abandoning the most strategic territory in the Northern Hemisphere. The war is over. The Cold War is beginning. And Greenland is about to become ground zero for the new conflict. January 1951. Thule, northwestern Greenland. The temperature reads 40 below zero. Wind screams across the polar desert at 60 miles per hour. Into this apocalyptic landscape, American construction crews arrive with a mission that will reshape Arctic geopolitics forever. They are building Thule Air Base, a massive military installation 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The official purpose: early warning radar systems to detect Soviet bombers crossing over the North Pole. The real purpose: to turn Greenland into America's unsinkable aircraft carrier aimed at the Soviet heartland. Denmark protests weekly. The United States negotiates a new defense treaty in 1951, formalizing American military presence. But the Inuit village of Thule, inhabited for centuries, sits exactly where the Air Force wants its runways. In 1953, the Danish government, under American pressure, forcibly relocates the entire population, 130 people, to a settlement 60 miles north. Families are given 4 days' notice. Homes are bulldozed. The relocation is later ruled illegal by Danish courts, but by then, Thule Air Base is already operational, housing 10,000 American personnel at its peak. From Thule, B. 52 bombers armed with nuclear weapons fly, continuous patrols, Chrome Dome, missions designed to ensure America can retaliate even if the Soviet Union launches a surprise first strike. The bombers circle endlessly, refueling midair, carrying thermonuclear weapons within striking distance of Moscow. Greenland, once worthless, is now hosting weapons that could end human civilization. Then comes 1959 and Project Iceworm, a secret so audacious it sounds like science fiction. Deep beneath Greenland's ice sheet, the U.S. Army begins constructing Camp Century, an underground city powered by a portable nuclear reactor. Officially, it's a research facility studying ice core samples. Secretly, it's a prototype for a vast network of tunnels that would house 600 nuclear missiles on mobile tracks beneath the ice, invulnerable to Soviet attack, capable of surviving a first strike and launching devastating retaliation. Engineers carve tunnels through solid ice, creating rooms, laboratories, living quarters, an entire base buried beneath the glacier. The project is brilliant. It's also doomed. The ice moves. Glaciers aren't static. They flow like frozen rivers. Within years, the tunnels begin to deform, collapse. By 1967, Camp Century is abandoned. Its nuclear reactor removed, but its toxic waste entombed forever in the ice. Denmark isn't told about the missiles until decades later. The revelation causes diplomatic scandals, but by then, the geopolitical calculus has already shifted. Because beneath the ice, something more valuable than military advantage is waiting. 2007, Greenland Geological Survey Headquarters. Scientists reviewing satellite data and mineral surveys make announcements that electrify governments worldwide. Greenland sits atop one of Earth's largest untapped reserves of rare earth elements. The metals essential for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military guidance systems. The island also contains vast deposits of uranium, zinc, lead, and potentially billions of barrels of offshore oil. But here's the critical factor. Climate change is melting the ice sheet. Resources once locked beneath miles of ice are becoming accessible. The Arctic ice cap is shrinking at unprecedented rates. By 2040, scientists predict the Northwest Passage, the legendary route across the Arctic connecting the Atlantic and Pacific, will be navigable year-round. Shipping routes that currently go through the Suez or Panama Canals could be replaced by Arctic lanes passing directly by Greenland, cutting transit times between Asia and Europe by weeks. Whoever controls Greenland controls the toll booth. Russia sees this. President Vladimir Putin orders massive investments in Arctic military infrastructure, new bases, icebreakers, submarines designed for polar operations. Russia plants a titanium flag on the North Pole's seabed in 2007, symbolically claiming the Arctic as Russian domain. Military exercises intensify. New weapon systems, hypersonic missiles, nuclear-powered autonomous torpedoes, are tested in Arctic waters. China, despite having no Arctic territory, declares itself a near-Arctic state and announces the Polar Silk Road Initiative. Chinese companies invest billions in Greenland mining projects. Chinese research stations appear across the Arctic. Beijing's strategy is transparent. Establish economic presence, gain influence, secure access to resources and shipping routes before the ice fully melts. And Greenland itself is changing. In 2009, Denmark grants Greenland self-governance over most internal affairs. The island's 56,000 residents, mostly Inuit, now control their own resources, education, police. Only foreign affairs and defense remain under Danish control. But Greenland's government is divided. Some see independence as inevitable and desirable. Others recognize the island's economy depends on Danish subsidies, totaling over $500 million annually. Independence means finding new revenue. And the most obvious source is selling resource extraction rights to the highest bidder, whether that's China, Russia, or the United States. The stage is set. The ice is melting. The resources are proven. The military value is undeniable. And in 2019, an American president says out loud what everyone is thinking. August 2019. Kangerlussuaq, Greenland. President Trump's offer to purchase Greenland detonates across international media. Comedians mock it. Diplomats condemn it. But in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, the reaction is more complex. Some Greenlanders are offended. Their home isn't for sale like a real estate transaction. Others see opportunity. If the United States is willing to discuss billions of dollars, perhaps Denmark will finally increase investment. Perhaps China will make counteroffers. Perhaps Greenland has more leverage than anyone realized. The offer is rejected, but the message is sent. Greenland is back on the great power chessboard. And this time, the game is existential. By 2025, the convergence is complete. Climate change has accelerated beyond scientific predictions. Summer ice coverage in the Arctic reaches record lows. Greenland's ice sheet is losing 280 billion tons of ice annually, enough to raise global sea levels measurably. But that catastrophe for the world is an opportunity for Greenland. As ice retreats, accessible coastline expands. Mining operations that were economically impossible become viable. Oil drilling platforms can operate in waters once choked with icebergs. Russia has militarized the Arctic beyond Cold War levels. New bases up the Siberian coast. The Northern Fleet, Russia's most powerful naval force, conducts exercises simulating combat operations in ice-filled waters. Submarines lurk beneath the polar ice cap, invisible to satellites, carrying enough nuclear firepower to annihilate continents. And every Russian military analyst knows the Jayuke Gap, the oceanic choke point between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, is where Russian submarines must pass to reach the Atlantic. Whoever controls Greenland controls the gate. China plays a different game. Unable to claim territory, Beijing pursues economic colonization. Chinese corporations offer to build airports in Greenland, civilian infrastructure with obvious dual-use military potential. When the United States and Denmark pressure Greenland to reject Chinese financing, Beijing pivots to mining contracts, fishing rights, tourism investments. The strategy is patient, incremental, designed to make Greenland economically dependent on Chinese capital before anyone notices the strings attached. The United States, belatedly recognized in competition, reopens its consulate in Nuuk in 2020, closed since 1953. Investment pledges follow. Military agreements are updated. Thule Air Base undergoes modernization, receiving upgraded radar systems capable of tracking hypersonic missiles. American officials speak openly about Greenland's strategic importance, in language not heard since the Cold War. Denmark finds itself caught in the middle, too small to defend Greenland alone, too proud to simply hand sovereignty to America, too economically limited to outbid China. Copenhagen increases Greenland's annual subsidy, promises infrastructure investment, deploys additional military assets. But everyone knows the truth. Denmark's hold on Greenland is weakening. The question isn't if Greenland becomes independent. It's when and what happens after. Because independence creates a vacuum. A nation of 56,000 people cannot defend an island larger than Mexico against superpowers. Greenland would need a patron, a country willing to guarantee security in exchange for basing rights, resource access, strategic partnership. The United States is the obvious choice, but obvious doesn't mean certain. What if Greenland chooses China? What if Russia makes an offer Denmark cannot refuse before independence occurs? What if competition escalates into confrontation? January 7th, 2025, Washington, D.C. President-elect Trump refuses to rule out military action to acquire Greenland. The statement shocks allies. NATO officials scramble to interpret whether it's negotiating bluster or actual policy. Russia's foreign ministry issues a statement declaring any American military action in Greenland would be considered aggression. China's state media publishes editorials warning against Arctic imperialism. Denmark recalls its ambassador for consultations. The world is hurtling toward a crisis most people don't understand is happening. Because Greenland isn't just an island. It's the linchpin of Northern Hemisphere military strategy. It's the gateway to Arctic shipping routes worth trillions. It's sitting on resources that will power the next century's technology. It's melting, opening, transforming from frozen wasteland into the most contested territory on Earth. Erik the Red named it Greenland as a lie to attract settlers. 1,000 years later, climate change is making his lie come true. The ice is vanishing. Green valleys are emerging. And with them, the end of Greenland's centuries of strategic irrelevance. Trump's question, why don't we just buy it, wasn't absurd. It was the only honest acknowledgement of what every military planner, resource analyst, and geopolitical strategist already knows. Whoever controls Greenland in the 21st century controls the Arctic. And whoever controls the Arctic controls the future balance of global power. The scramble has begun. Russia is expanding. China is investing. America is awakening to what it nearly lost. And Greenland, caught between ice and fire, between obscurity and centrality, holds the key to a future being written not in diplomacy, but in melting glaciers and great power ambition. The question isn't, what if everyone attacked Greenland? The question is, what happens when everyone realizes they already are, just not with armies yet? The cold peace is ending. The new great game is here. And this time, the prize is a frozen island that will determine whether the 21st century belongs to democracy, autocracy, or chaos.